Welcome to GTM Global's latest webinar in association with WorldFirst for scale-ups looking to expand internationally. Today, we're focusing on how to grow your online business in China, and we're delighted to welcome Serena Kanji from Alibaba, Pearl Zhu from China Britain Business Council, Jatin Burabi from the Department for International Trade, and Daniel Howe, the Managing Director of WorldFirst, to share with you their expertise and knowledge on accessing this exciting and vibrant marketplace. A few bits of housekeeping to start with. First of all, can please everybody mute their mics before we start. I know you'll have some interesting questions to put to our panelists, and please do put them via the text chat. And we'll attempt to get through as many questions as answered as possible. But if your question isn't answered on the day, not to worry. You can speak directly to any of our panelists after the webinar, and we'll connect you directly to them. Before I ask Serena to give us an overview on the e-commerce opportunities for the UK, I'd like to just give you a bit of a sort of profile of the audience that's going to be in the room. I'm going to just share my screen with you so you can see that. Just bear with me. Okay, so just in terms of who we have, who's registered, it's quite interesting to look at the profile of our audience. And we asked 3 questions of all who've attended. Basically, the first one was, what level of business do you currently have in China? It looks like from the people we've got, some 60% haven't got any, 17% have some limited sales, and another 17% or so have some growth there. In terms of how has the pandemic affected your business, some 40-odd% thinks it's slowed it down and they're reassessing. There is another 28% who think it's been accelerated, and 29% with no effect. And then finally, slide 3, where do you all sell internationally at the moment? Well, again, nearly 40% global. 8.6% in APAC, 12% in China, 25% in EMEA, and about 16% in North America. So an interesting spread of organizations and marketplaces that you're involved in. And then the final piece which relates to this is in terms of the profile and sectors that are here in the on the call. We've got a lot of people from retail and consumer. But we've also got some interesting other sectors like IT, healthcare, media, financial services, travel. So there's an interesting mixture of organizations and companies that are involved. So with that basis, I'd like to now just scroll down on my page. Yeah, so I'd like to now, if I can, introduce Serena Kanji from Alibaba Tmall Business Development and Marketing to give us an overview on e-commerce in China and the opportunities there for UK brands. Serena, over to you.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for attending the webinar today. So my name is Serena and I'm from the Tmall Business Development team at Alibaba Group based in London. So today I'm going to spend about 20 minutes walking you through e-commerce in China and opportunities for UK brands. My presentation will take 3 different flows. Firstly, we'll speak quickly about China in the post-COVID-19 world, introduction to Alibaba and Tmall Global, and then the final section, we will look at how to sell online in China. So to start with, what you're looking at with China is a very technologically empowered market. It's a market which has an underpinning of extremely sophisticated delivery networks where items purchased online and groceries included within that can be delivered to consumers within as little as 20 minutes in the major cities. You've got a consumer who is extremely comfortable in the online world. Forbes forecasts that China retail sales would be 50% of all retail sales by the end of 2020. That may even be a slightly conservative figure. Now we look at coronavirus and how that has changed things. What that means is that nearly 80% of Chinese consumers have transacted online at some point. And the way that people are accessing social commerce, and brands and retailers is through the new medium of live stream. So it's really taken force over the last 6 months, and certainly again in the last 3 months. And we saw the overall number of Taobao Live, which is the Alibaba live streaming channel, sessions increased by 123% year on year during our 618 campaign that took place last week. And what that means is that there is a very strong positive sentiment in China post-COVID-19. So things were already increasing, obviously, in the online world. There was a small fluctuation moment as the pandemic exploded. And then what we've seen is a rapid recovery with demands increasing. And the forecasts are that imports will continue to grow continuously. And something that I'd like you to bear in mind as I walk through my slides today is that retail is now entertainment in China. It is not just a place where you come and you click and you check out. It's a place where you can come to explore and discover new brands. You can share and recommend brands with your friends. Almost every SKU that you look at on Tmall will start with a short video. So very quickly, the audience is engaged. And then, as I mentioned, live streaming is something that is really now popular. You're seeing lots of key opinion leaders who are representing brands and hosting sessions to explain how to use products, how to make things, review them, make it fun. And then the customer has the opportunity to see now and buy now. So it's a very exciting way of shopping in China. And something that we think is really interesting is if you think about how often you would go to your favorite e-commerce site. Maybe it's once a week. If it's a grocery thing, maybe once a week, twice a week even. But what we see in China is that customers are coming to our e-commerce China marketplaces, Tmall and Taobao, up to 7 times a day, and they're spending about half an hour a day with us. So the way that they shop, the exploration, the sharing, the videos, the live stream, means that it is a very entertaining place to shop. So to introduce more of our business units, I won't spend forever on this slide, but I do think it's really important to show you the breadth of the Alibaba ecosystem to understand how they end up spending so much time with us. So up here, we've got obviously top left of the screen, our core commerce. This is the part that most people know us for. And the part that I will focus on today is Tmall Global, which is our cross-border e-commerce channel. But originally when Alibaba started, it was a B2B platform. It was a way for Chinese businesses to reach the rest of the world. So if you wanted to buy 100,000 staplers, that's the place you go. It then evolved with Taobao, which still exists today as our C2C platform. And then that evolved into Tmall. Tmall is essentially Taobao Mall. It is the place where brands and the authorized distributors of brands come to sell their products to Chinese consumers. And on top of that, we then have platforms in Southeast Asia, also South Asia, and AliExpress, which people in Europe and the rest of the world can purchase from. Moving over to the right-hand side, there are lots of consumer services. Up here, Ulama, you can order food. Kobe, book a restaurant. Fliggy, book a holiday. So there's lots of things that you can do. And then through digital media and entertainment, you can watch an NBA game. You can watch an English Premier League game on Yoku. You can navigate your way to work. You can chat. And then underpinning everything, we developed the backbone of e-commerce. So a logistics network across the world with lots of partner warehouses and drivers through our network of Sanyao. Alimama is our marketing services and data management platform. Ant Financial for payment and financial services. And most famously, Alipay, which is the e-wallet with which Chinese consumers scan a barcode and pay for everything in China or when they travel. And then Alibaba Cloud is the tech and systems infrastructure that powers everything. This is perhaps what a day in the life of an Alibaba consumer might look like. wake up in the morning, you can check the news, check the traffic on the way to work. Through Alipay, you can order a cab to work. Cabs are super cheap in China. At lunchtime, either you order some food to be delivered to you, or you can book a restaurant to go to with your friends. And over lunch, you maybe browse some things to shop on Taobao and Tmall, maybe browse a holiday. And then through the evening, you could maybe have dinner in our supermarket, Fresh Hippo, get a cab home, and then you're checking out some more of those products that you wanted to buy and making the purchases. So you can really see how it's integrated through everything that you can do. So to talk about Tmall, Tmall Global is the largest B2C cross-border e-commerce platform in China. So what that means is that it is a place where international brands can enter the China market relatively easily. We offer various different business solutions, but what we do see, which is really exciting, I think, is that more than 80% of brands on Tmall Global make their China debut with us. And that platform now has over 25,000 international brands from almost 100 countries, selling products from over 5,000 categories. So you can almost find anything there. To explain more what cross-border e-commerce is, so on the right-hand side, you can see Tmall. This is how the platform, the app, because it's an app, majority of customers are shopping on their phone, they're not shopping on a laptop. Tmall started with a brand that had to be domestically available in China. And just like all of us, the Chinese consumer wanted more. They wanted to find brands and products that they couldn't find in their home country. So Alibaba evolved Tmall Global as a cross-border platform, which means that a brand can enter China with the legal entity, the financial entity that you have in your home country. We recommend that you register Chinese trademarks, but to sell on Tmall Global, you don't need them. Packaging, labeling, exactly as you would sell in the UK. And we have a warehouse infrastructure, which means that you can access bonded warehouses in duty-free trade zones, or global fulfillment centers, or warehousing in Hong Kong or Europe, rest of the world, in order to put products into, and then they would be able to reach the last mile to our customer through our logistics network of Sanyao. So this briefly summarizes what cross-border e-commerce is and how the Tmall Global world works. So some of the trends that we see are quite interesting. So over on the left, you see an example of the Tmall Global mobile homepage. So you can see it's quite busy. It's quite different than we're used to in Western e-commerce. There's a lot there, but that is all about the discovery and the exploration. Every time you open the app, you'll see something new, and you and I will never see the same thing because we have different tastes, different interests, different spend powers. So some of the more established categories that are on Tmall Global that have been prominent for the first 6 years of its life are cosmetics. So we see businesses like The Body Shop who are able to sell cross-border into China, which they are very famous for not testing on animals. So that's an interesting angle, that they can access the Chinese market using that manifesto that they have and that core fundamental principle of their business by selling cross-border. Personal care products, health supplements, which are quite challenging to register as a product in China under general trade. These are a really popular category on Tmall Global. Baby formula, something that consumers really look for from countries outside of China. They really value products that come from the UK, from Australia, New Zealand, Japan when it comes to baby formula. And teas and honey have always been very much in demand. And then over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, we've seen an evolution of trends. Beauty tech and tools has been increasingly popular. Men's skincare, maternity products, so evolving on from that baby formula, that mum who is shopping, they're now looking for different things. They're looking for things like makeup products that are appropriate for a pregnant mother. Pets has become a fast-growing category. Chinese consumers now with, like many of us as well, more disposable income and delaying having children, they have pets instead. So the demand for pet products is becoming big. And with the busy lifestyles that they lead, sleep aid products are very much a trend right now. So some of the UK brands that we've got selling on here will be household names to all of you. Body Shop, Boots, the Hut Group with My Protein, Slim Fast, Wittard, Charlotte Tilbury, LV, GHD, Bowden, Tenscare, all of these brands are very, very well known in the home country, and these have all gone to China and sell through the e-commerce platform, the cross-border e-commerce platform of Tmall Global, and all with their brand and their product as it is in the UK. So the final part is, if you can sell with your brand in the UK, how do you actually sell it to China? What do you need to do to be successful? So we have some different business models for brands to focus on, to enter the market with. But today I'm going to focus on the Tmall Global flagship store model. So it's a marketplace model where a brand has a flagship store. It's self-managed online brand flagship store, just like a website would be in the UK. So Tmall Global will provide the brand with the platform to create that store. And through that store, it's a place where you can market and promote your brand. You can use your brand DNA, the look and feel, and tailor it to the China market. And it's a place where you can introduce your new products, you can have hero SKUs, and you can build your customer base. And the customer service option, it's really like having an online sales associate. They're not just answering when is my product going to be delivered, they will be speaking to the customer, explaining how to use the product, perhaps offering other products to purchase with the one that they had in mind. That customer service element is really important, and it's really a place where you can do everything with your brand that you want to speak to the consumer. The other solutions that we have are Tmall Direct Import, where we would directly purchase some popular best-selling products in China. Overseas Fulfillment Channel, which is a place for brands to try out new SKUs. So there is a consignment model where you can put goods in a warehouse in Europe, and then we can sell it on our Tmall Overseas Fulfillment Channel. And the third is a web-to-web, well, the fourth is a web-to-web solution, which is really for brands that have a breadth of products and want to be able to plug in quite easily through an API. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 different logistics solutions to get those imported goods into China through cross-border e-commerce, primarily using the bonded warehouse solution in duty-free trade zones in China. So collaboratively is the way that we work. When a brand is initially thinking about going to China, the first thing that they will do is speak to us, the Tmall Global team. So we are teams in London, and we each have category specialisms, and we would help support you to understand the best route to market to start with. And then the second point is to find a partner. So either a trade partner or a distributor who essentially act as your e-commerce team on the ground in China. And then we will support with the logistics, and you as the brand can then come in and lead the overall strategy for your brand in China and work with your partner to set a marketing budget and launch and trade the store. Something that I think is absolutely vital to success in China is building a strategy that is right for China. In my experience, it's no good just copy and pasting the ideas and strategy that you have here in the UK, because even though there are many similarities with people all across the world, the consumer in China is different. They will approach your brand differently and they will respond to it differently. So it's really important that you go through all of the fundamental e-commerce elements, as you see here, of pricing, of brand image, of tone of voice, product descriptions, social content, that you localize that for China, and your TP would help you do that. And then to build, you need to seed your brand in China, working with the social channels. Of course, all of the social channels in China are completely different to the ones that we have here in the West. And we have examples, Douyin, TikTok, as you may more commonly know it, Little Red Book, and Weibo. So these are really great ways to start seeding your brand into China by working with key opinion leaders to get your brand known and to communicate with people what it's all about. Because the worst thing would be to open a store on day one and nobody comes because nobody knows who you are. So starting to seed and build up your brand in the first place through these social channels, And then once you have launched your store, you can participate in lots of promotional activities on the Tmall platform. So there will be lots of different campaigns that you can take part in. The most famous ones are probably Double 11 or Singles Day, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, that takes place on the 11th of November, which is a global commerce shopping festival. And then to the second biggest festival, which is 618, the summer campaign that took place last week, or Women's Day. Following that, there will be lots and lots of different category campaigns that brands can partake in and get their brand known and more visible and exposed to more traffic on the Tmall global platform. And I would like now to just show you an example case study of Smooth Skin, which is a fantastic example of an SME from Wales, an IPL hair removal brand who 2.5 years ago, when they started working with us, I don't think any of us had heard of them, but they are one of the leading IPL hair removal brands, and this is their Tmall global store. So they started working with us and a partner in China, and they localized their store homepage. They identified which of their SKUs was the hero SKU, and then they adapted their artwork for the Chinese market. So you'll see on the right hand side, this is their full product range, or a screenshot of, and you can see that they are using lots of wording, lots of different ways of communicating. And when you leaf through their store, you'll see things like over on the left hand side, you'll see made in the UK, you'll see the Union Jack, you'll see that it's FDA approved. This is a video that you're seeing first. And there's almost an endless scroll of content that you can load onto your product page to demonstrate what the brand is all about and how to use the product and why you will use it, how effective it will be. So it's a really great place for communicating with the customer and also telling your brand story. And then the final part is the customer reviews, which I mentioned earlier when I talked about customer service. The other side of that is the reviews. Peer-to-peer referencing is really big in China, because people will learn about a brand from the brand. They will learn about it from a key opinion leader, but they have a really huge respect for reviews from other customers. So they have a really big impact on conversion rates of your brand. So it's important that your partner can help to build your customer reviews on the site. And I'm just going to leave you with 3 tips for success, because I think working in China can be quite difficult. It's our job as Alibaba to make it as easy as possible to do business. But my 3 tips would be, firstly, to adapt to the pace of China. It is moving really quickly. You'll see through those new trends that I shared earlier that new trends come up lots, quite frequently, and you have to be able to move quite quickly to catch the crest of that wave. The second is partnership. Finding a partner that you can work with for a good long time is important in China, because you want to build that and grow together. And the final tip, I think, is patience. It is different in China, selling, but at the end of the day, it's selling. It's selling to people that want to buy a product. So it takes a little bit of patience, but then once you combine these 3 tips, then you're onto a good start. And I'm just going to leave, before we head to the panel discussion, just 2 resources that brands might want to look at for further information. The first is alizilla.com, which is our company news site, where you can find lots of brand case studies and news about the various Alibaba ecosystems, business units in the ecosystem. And the other page is the Tmall Global LinkedIn page, where you will find, again, lots of tips and tricks for setting up and working with Tmall Global. That's it. Wow.
Thank you, Serena. Fascinating stuff. Interesting, the 3 Ps, pace, partnership, and patience. That's very good. If I can start with some general and pivotal information. Obviously, China's a lucrative market, but difficult to penetrate. And you obviously mentioned those 3 Ps can you give me a bit more of a sense of how you make it easy for UK brands to do business in China? And if a brand wanted to launch a store on Tmall Global, how do they get started? Those are the 2 things. Could you talk us through those 2 elements, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think firstly, the goal of the Alibaba ecosystem is to make it easy for brands to do business. So we offer a support system. We have teams on the ground here in the UK, so you can speak to somebody in your time zone, in your language, and we're really closely linked to the teams in China to be able to facilitate that journey and route to market. Then the other element of that is that we host lots of sort of networking events in London. Obviously, at the moment, they're a bit more challenging, but we're running lots of webinars which help brands to learn from other brands and to get a level of comfort around working in China and how it could work for them and how it works for like brands so that they can sort of get a sense of what it might be like for them. How to launch a store? The first thing is really to come and talk to us, to come and have one-on-one meetings with the Tmall global business development teams, and we will ask you questions about the brand so that we can understand it and understand which product categories it falls into. And then we'll look at sort of your business and your setup and work out with you a route to market and help you to enter the next stage, which is really the finding a partner process.
Great. So questions are coming in all the time, and I just wanted to ask you, someone's asked about the shopping festivals you organize over the year. There's 11.11 or Singles Day is the best known. Can you give us some tips about driving growth around 11.11?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would always say about 11.11 is to be prepared. It's so important to work closely with your partners to understand what your potential sales can be and to get enough stock in there into our warehouses in time so that you don't miss out and that customers are not disappointed. So the other thing I would say is that it's important to invest in marketing. Generally, the customer knows what they want to buy on 11.11. They have thought about it for a while, and it's really a very exciting festival. It's not only a place where you can get a great deal, it's also a time when you will be able to get something that you can only buy on that day, or it's a time when a brand will work in collaboration with another brand that can quite often be a very different brand than we would expect to see here in the West. So it starts with this sort of big build up. It starts with a big gala show with lots of celebrities and sports stars taking part, and it's broadcast on Yoku. You can play lots of games and catch the cat and treasure hunt with your phone, and take part in augmented reality game shows while this is going on. So it's a very exciting time, and you really want your brand to be part of that and to have a successful time. So definitely being prepared, getting your sort of sales forecast, getting your stock, and building up your brand presence early. And when I say early, I mean like a good few months early is important.
Great. We've been flooded with questions, and just to let everyone know, we've got a general panel session afterwards, so we're just amassing them at the moment. But I've got just one more question for you, Serena, before we talk to the panelists, and that is you mentioned the importance of having a third-party trade partner when launching on Tmall. How do you find that right trade partner? What's the secret of success there?
Yeah, this is a really important question, but one that everybody asks. The short answer is we can help you find one. We have a TP team who are based in our head office in Hangzhou, who are agnostic to brand and category. So when a brand comes and speaks to the Tmall business development team first, and we hand them off to go to the next stage, the brand will submit a presentation about themselves and fill out a short Excel form, which is then passed on to the TP team, who will then provide a short list of partners for the brand to go away and speak to. So these partners are carefully monitored by us. We have a very transparent system, actually. Whenever you look at a Tmall Global or Tmall store, you'll notice at the top that there are 3 scores out of 5. One measures content, one measures logistics, and one measures reviews. You need to get a good score on those in order to remain a recommended TP within our ecosystem. So you have some level of comfort in who we're introducing to you. And then it will be entirely over to the brand. It is the brand's decision who they work with. But I would suggest usually at least 2, if not 3 calls with each TP to really understand each other's business, for the TP to share case studies of who they've worked with before, how they've grown a brand, how they've launched, any mistakes that they've made. Get them to be quite honest with you about what they did wrong and how they've learned from it and what they now do differently, so that you can then feel for the one that you want to work with and who could be a good fit for your business in China. And then we move forward to onboarding. Fantastic.
Well, listen, we'll come back to you in the panel session at the end, and I just want to broaden this out now and bring in some of our other experts we've got on this Zoom. And I'm delighted to be able to introduce into the conversation Pearl Zhu from China Britain Business Council. Pearl, can you give us a brief overview of how CBBC helps support and facilitate UK-China trade?
Okay, thanks, Mark. Thanks for inviting me here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Pearl. I'm the UK sector lead for retail and e-commerce here in China Britain Business Council. CBBC is the leading British organization that promoting trade and investment between the UK and China. We have around 130 staffs across UK and our 13 offices in China. Our consumer sector includes 3 subsets, which is retail and e-commerce, food and drink, and creative and sports. So we provide a wide range of practical services, advice, and support, helping British companies that doing business and growing in China. So some of our most popular services that we delivered for retail brand include partner identification, which we fund and connect the UK brand with the Chinese buyers, distributors, and investors. We also have a service called digital audit, which we help UK brand to understand their existing online presence through all the social media and major e-commerce platforms. We also organize trade missions, which we help UK brand to participate in some of the biggest sector trade shows in China. So for example, we have a China Beauty Export, we have Shanghai Fashion Week, and we have this CBME for mother and baby brands. As Serena mentioned, the live streaming is very popular in China at this moment. So recently we have had a retail initiative called UK Super Brand Day, and we partnered with 2 of China's top KOLs to launch 2 sales-driven live streamings. And we have generated 1.6 million viewership and over 1.5 million RMB sales revenues within 2 hours. We will launch another sales-driven live streaming in this September to really help UK brand to generate some sales in China. So yeah, do speak to us if you think there is anything that CBBC could help you grow in your business in China.
Pearl, that's great. So again, a few questions just to ask you before, particularly, obviously, you've got fantastic experience in advising global brands to go into China. What do you think is the most important thing that brands need to prepare for their preliminary phase to doing business there? What's the what are the key first steps?
I think there are at least 2 things that brand need to check in the early stage. And the first is the intellectual property registration. This is very critical because in China, there is a first to file principle, meaning that any company could register your brand before you come into China and block you using your own trade names and logos. There are some international brands that we've seen that China doesn't in their plan for years, and this left a huge amount of time for other people to sue it. And when they started to thinking of China, they have to put a lot more time and budget to get back. So my suggestion for the brand is, even China is not in your short-term plan. Maybe you're not trading with China in the next 5 years, but register your IP now. I think the second tips I would say is to have a comprehensive market research. This is also something very important because we have so many brands that are coming to us for all kind of different questions and problems or challenges they have had in China. And they think it's partly because they don't understand that market well enough. So for example, they come to us saying that, oh, what's the price point? Are we suitable for social commerce? Which e-commerce platform are suitable? All those kind of questions. And we usually suggest them to conduct a research project for helping them to further understand that situation. And among all kind of research, or brand told me that they found the competitor analysis are kind of particularly helpful for them because it really just gives them an overview of who their competitor is and what they are doing in China. So if you started thinking of China, make sure that you have had your IP registered and have some like comprehensive market research helping you to understand that market.
That's really interesting, Paul. We're getting a lot more questions in. One of them is particularly about partners and partnerships. That's really important. Can you give us some tips on managing and working with a local Chinese partner? That seems to be a pivotal question we're getting asked.
Yeah, well, I think working with Chinese partner will definitely increase the speed of market entrance. And from my day-to-day work, I think there are like some common issues that like needs UK brands' attention. So the first, like being asked frequently, is some of the distributor, they might represent lots of similar products, and like the brand's product might not be the distributor's prioritize, and the distributor or partner, they don't want to invest in marketing and branding and advertising. So for this kind of situation, then make sure that you provide enough help with lots of like marketing assets or strategies or budget to really stimulate your Chinese partner or distributor focus on your brand. And I think the second thing is, well, some brands, they tend to commission their Chinese partner to process their IP registration and other like social media accounts, just to make sure that all the IPs and accounts are registered under your ownership, and the usage of any IP should be made very clear in the deal between the brand and the distributor. It will just save you lots of like legal process if you want to change your partner in near future. I think the last very common question for how to work with Chinese partner is some brand, they will have multiple distributors or partners in China, and a common situation is a different distributor in the market, they selling same product at a very different like price point, and it will lead a kind of like a vicious circle to compare that who is the lowest price point, and this is eventually will damage the brand equity and lose some margins. So I would suggest UK brand to take the control of the price and to make sure that you set up the value chain for the products and reaching a clear agreement with each distributors.
Thanks, Pearl. And again, we'll come back to you for a Q&A panel session at the end. I'd like to bring in, if I can now, the UK government into the mix here. And we've got very delighted to introduce Jatin Bhuharabi from the Department for International Trade. Jatin, can you give us a sense of how the DIT aligns itself to support UK businesses in China too?
Absolutely, yeah. So thanks for inviting me along to sit alongside you guys and talk about this. Apologies for the moving camera. Government laptops and Zoom don't seem to mix at the moment unless it's on the browser versions, and this didn't allow me to download it, so this is on my personal phone. So I guess where we sit for e-commerce and support for companies in China. So there's the e-exporting program, which is how the UK Department for International Trade supports the e-commerce industry and helps British brands partner with global companies and succeed through e-commerce. So there's 4 key elements to this. There's marketplace partnerships with people like Alibaba. There's selling online overseas, which is a listing on the Gov website, which has a list of all the marketplaces we partner with. There's promotions that we do with marketplaces, which British brands can be part of. And there's e-commerce advisors on the ground. And those guys are the actual specialists who work in the regional teams, who I'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit more later. We launched in September 2014, so it's a 6-year-old program. We've helped UK brands and retailers export through e-commerce, through first party and through marketplaces as well. There's over 5,000 companies that we've helped to date. Primary sectors are like retail, consumer, food and drink, fashion, luxury. You know, in addition to the services we offer, we have international trade advisors. In addition to e-commerce, there's general international trade support. There's the embassy network that we have. There's something called OMIS, which is extra market research, which, you know, go to Deloitte, will cost you 10,000, come to us, and, you know, we'll use our resources that we have to do it for a lot less. That's only some of the work that we do. Most of everything we provide is entirely free at the point of use. And then webinars, workshops, and masterclasses, much like this. Those are some of the key things that we offer to support UK businesses to help them export.
Great. And Yasin, we obviously, can you give us, it'd be really super if you can give us some examples of companies you've helped, large or small, maybe a contrast between two sizes, and what those ingredients were, to give people a sense of both a smaller business and a slightly larger one, how you help them, what that has meant on the ground.
I think it's important to kind of frame this to say that DIT is a government department, right? So we support businesses across the 4 nations on the ground. We have 9 regional offices across England. Plus then there's the 3 devolved administrations as well, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. They have their own devolved trade investment departments. And then in each office, we have specialists in retail consumer goods. So these guys are the actual specialists in various industry verticals. And then the support that we provide, the e-commerce specific support, is through ECAs. These are e-commerce advisors. They are specialists in e-commerce platforms, market strategy, localization, logistics, international SEO, all the stuff that you need to think about when it's not just domestic e-commerce, but international as well. In addition to that, the UK government's got embassies in 160 odd countries where we have people on the ground supporting companies. So there's support that starts here and it ends there. So it's, you know, we're getting information from the ground back to the UK company that needs the support. So in terms of a small company, let's say, you know, we're helping some smaller British tea brands selling to China on Alibaba. And then if you kind of flip it around and go, all right, so what about, you know, at the other end? You know, you often hear about things like, you know, us supporting Boeing, but not Boeing, Airbus, and BAE Systems, or whatever it might be, with the work that they have in the country. But, you know, in terms of large companies, we're helping a top-tier British sports brand, and one of the most well-known that there is, with advice on big expansion plans that they have for China. So they're working on their Alibaba launch, they're finding the right CP, thinking about intellectual property, as was mentioned before by Pearl, you know, planning their legal structures and licensing. So there's a simple and there's a complex, and we support all kinds of businesses all the way through. We do provide appropriate support depending on the stage of business. You know, it's barring a few exceptions, is it wise to focus on e-commerce exports until a business has domestic e-commerce up and running? But for some businesses, you know, that is the right thing to do. So we want to talk to everybody to support them.
Jatin, that's great. I'm going to come back to you on the panel session, but I now would like very much to bring in Daniel Howe, Managing Director of WorldFirst, into the conversation. Daniel, are you there?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Good, yes, I can hear you. So
Brilliant.
I'd like just, if I could, just pose a few questions to you, because we know as of last year, WorldFirst was acquired by Ant Financial, or Alipay, as most of us or our listeners will know them, and as such became a part of the Alibaba ecosystem. Can you give us some context around WorldFirst's growth to date, including how and why the acquisition came about?
Yeah, happy to. So, I mean, if I just look at perhaps where we've come from and what we've done over the course of the last few years, when I first joined this business, actually, we were really a consumer-focused business. So we were providing cross-border payment services to individuals like you and I, buying international property, sending funds to friends and family. The direction of the business, shortly after I joined, actually became very much focused on the growth of our SME customer base. So we've become better known now for a global wallet solution that we provide to SMEs, which is effectively a single platform that allows our SME customers to set up, manage and maintain international bank accounts in global markets. So really good example, if I was a UK business, I could work across the WorldFirst platform, setting up a US dollar bank account in the US. I could set up a China offshore account in Hong Kong, China. I could set up a Euro account in Europe, and I could manage that all in one place. So that product in the very early stages was quite a restrictive product. So it was really quite a niche marketplace collection solution. So I don't know how many of you know much about Amazon and how they enable businesses to sell cross-border. But effectively, they make it very easy for businesses to do business in markets all around the world. But what is perhaps slightly more restrictive is the repatriation of payments and the mechanics that sit behind that. So we really plugged that gap in the early stages. So it's quite a restrictive product. It was effectively, at that point in time, it was a collections product specifically for Amazon and providing repatriation solutions back to your own account. But what developed over time is, we started to broaden the scope of that product. And certainly what we did do, though, is build a very close affinity with marketplaces and e-commerce. So that opened up for us actually a really big audience in China. As you can imagine, there are lots of merchants in China that are selling into international markets. So we a huge customer base in China. And actually to this day, I think China probably represents about 50% of our customer base. So what that actually meant, I suppose, unknowingly, is that we developed this really close synergy with the Ant Financial Group. Ant Financial is a business best known for Alipay products, focused on digital payments and global wallets. But it's also a business that's really closely affiliated with the Alibaba Group of marketplaces. So as you can imagine, we've got this global collections product that really has been focused on marketplaces in the past, but has now become a broader global wallet solution. So actually it made a lot of sense for both businesses really, and provided significant value to both sides. So we originally went out, we were looking at a minority shareholder, but actually what we found in Ant was the perfect strategic partner, both in terms of expertise and in sort of global markets, but also in technology. And that was where the story concluded in February last year. So we've been working really hard with them over the course of this last period to develop our strategy and product.
So you've really developed a fantastic sort of ecosystem, sort of joining all the dots really, haven't you? What would be the vision going forward, especially in terms of the implications for business trading in the UK-China corridor? And where do you think this is, what are you going to achieve, and where will it all get to? What are the next steps?
So I suppose our vision and our mission hasn't necessarily changed, and actually we've always been really closely aligned, I think, with the Alibaba and Ant Financial vision of making it easy to do business anywhere. What perhaps has changed really is our focus. So our focus really being the China corridor. So as you can imagine, we're a business headquartered in London. We've got a big presence in rest of world markets, but a growing presence in China, and we're also now part of this huge group of businesses that really know that China market intimately and incredibly well. So what I suppose Ant brings to WorldFirst is technology and expertise, and it's technology and platforms and scalable technology that allows us to really develop the product. But it's also the expertise of doing business in China, and I think Serena and others have talked to over the course of this conversation, is that it really is something that does take quite detailed understanding and knowledge to really get right, and that's really where they've been able to accelerate our understanding of the China market. But where we see the biggest opportunity, where I think we're really uniquely placed, is that we have this global footprint. We've got this payments technology and payments ecosystem to which we've already built in advance of our relationship with Ant. But what we see now with the partnership with Ant is an incredible opportunity to solve what is actually a really significant pain point for customers on both sides of the China corridor transaction. So despite the fact that the China corridor is probably the biggest trade corridor in the world, it is really an unsolved pain point for many. The process of making payments into and out of China is actually really clunky. It's really quite slow. It's quite expensive. It's not a particularly seamless process by any stretch of the imagination. So the core focus at this point in time is focusing on the China corridor and developing and providing a frictionless solution for customers that trade internationally across that corridor in particular, with other services and products that we serve, but really focused on that corridor itself. And then I think naturally for us, it makes sense for us to continue to explore and collaborate with our partners at the Alibaba Group. So looking at the marketplaces that they operate both in China and outside of China. A lot of those marketplaces are marketplaces that are not necessarily domestic marketplaces. They connect China to rest of world markets, both selling Chinese products to the West and rest of world, and also taking rest of world brands into China. So I think you'll probably see us start to develop more improved solutions for payments on those marketplaces over time, or solutions to their customers. And I suppose, specifically in EMEA, I think we see that the big opportunity for most of our customers in EMEA is solving that pain point for payments into China. But there's definitely a growing demand for businesses looking to sell products and establish businesses in mainland China too. And we think that's going to be a trend that is going to continue to grow over the coming years. And that will involve, how do we make it frictionless for businesses to repatriate funds and return funds home.
Daniel, thank you. I'm going to, if I can, bring in the whole panel now. So if Serena and Pearl and Jatin can come back on screen. And I wanted to start just with Serena, if I can, because you mentioned in your presentation the importance of live streaming. Can you give us some examples of those companies who've been successful and, what's occurred there?
Yeah, so live streaming has become like a really exciting part of e-commerce in China. It's social, it's educational, it's interactive. So it's a very live place where you can see and buy now. So I think right at the top of my presentation, I mentioned that we'd seen a 123% growth in live stream sessions during our campaign last week for summer. And actually on the opening day of that campaign alone, our Taobao live streaming platform had contributed 5.1 billion RMB in sales, which is around 577 million pounds. That's just on day one of the campaign. So it's a very powerful way to sell. In terms of UK brands who've done it, it's a variety. You've had cosmetics brands like Pixie, Child's Farm, which is a baby skincare brand, Whittard of Chelsea, selling tea, and Smooth Skin, the IPL hair removal brand that I've mentioned. They've all successfully used live streaming to sell in China. And one of the most exciting elements of live streaming is the use of key opinion leaders and influencers to sell. So two of the most famous influencers are Weya and Austin Lee Jiaqi, otherwise known as the lipstick guy. So working with these key opinion leaders who will often select you rather than you select them are a way to attract audiences and also to sell your brand.
Thanks, Serena. We're getting some huge number of questions in. I wondered if I could just bring Pearl in. We've had a question around how sales tax is managed in China. Pearl, are you able to give us some sense of that? Apparently, Amazon make it super easy for Chinese resellers to avoid taxation. And obviously, a question obviously to Serena as well. Does Tmall make it easy for global sellers on that?
Serena, do you think that this question is more relevant to you? Because from my end, that I would like to ask that what platform that your product is on, because it's quite different, and what's the sector of your product is, because the sales tax are all different. So what we usually to do with those tax thing, that we connect brands with the professional legal firm or consulting firm, and those professional firms to gives you a very concrete tax advice.
Yeah, if we're talking about brands as well, selling on Tmall Global, so perhaps if the question is to understand who pays the tax, when you're selling Tmall Global, you are effectively selling B2C. So you, the brand, are putting those goods into a bonded warehouse in China and selling to the consumer. And Tmall Global is offering you the platform and the infrastructure to be able to do that. So the sales tax is paid by the customer. Sales tax in China for cross-border e-commerce starts at around 9.1%. It can vary by category, but obviously sometimes a little bit higher, but essentially the customer is the person who is paying the tax. Now, if you were to be a brand who wanted to sell under general trade, you would have to do the B2B import into China, and therefore you would pay B2B import taxes on your goods before they reached a place where they could sell to a customer inside the country.
Okay. Thank you for that. I suppose that just before I come back to Daniel to conclude, I'd just like to ask all the panelists, in terms of their experience, what would you say are the common pitfalls for brands to avoid? You know, if you could give, each of panelists could give one little bit of advice on what not to do, what would that be? And Serena, since you're on the screen, do you want to kickstart with that?
Yeah, sure. I'd probably say two things, actually. Firstly would be pace. China moves really, really quickly. And I think if you move slowly, you miss the boat, and you just need to react very quickly in China, whether that's entering the market in the first place or when you are already in the market and you're selling. That's also the importance of having the TP on the ground. You need to react quickly in order to serve the customers. That's definitely important. And I think the other element is not knowing your customer. It seems simple, but there's a lot of data that is provided to brands, which is their data. They own it. They can access back-end data about their traffic, their e-com KPIs, so they can build a really clear picture of who their customer is and where they are through that purchase funnel. So it's important that the brands use that data so that they understand their customer and they can serve them as best as possible.
Great, thanks for that. And if I can maybe bring Jatin in and ask you for a tip, a piece of advice from
Sure.
government.
Absolutely. So I'd say one thing to consider is that when you're thinking about entering a new market, especially China, don't look at it as incremental sales. This is a whole new ballgame. So you need to think about the fact that this is going to be something where you need to focus your attention. You're going to need a budget to market. You're going to need to put some attention and resources behind it. It's not like just thinking you're going to be, you know, opening another physical store and it's going to be accretive in terms of a small amount of extra sales. This is a multi-quarter, multi-year project that is going to develop over time. You need to put resources behind it, think about it. And, you know, the most important thing about that is being adaptable, being able to move, as Serena said, move quickly and adapt to the situations as they change. But that all comes down to having the plan in advance that you set out, that you sketch out with us and with CBBC. So, you know, we'll be able to provide you with support while you're working with Alibaba to make sure that that's successful. You know, it's not about going in blind. You're going to get help from us. We will help you to succeed.
Jatin, thank you. And Pearl, if I can bring you in before I turn to Daniel, could you give us one piece of sagacity on how to avoid common pitfalls?
Yeah, I think there are, well, some of brands, they don't know how to set a realistic sales projection before they go to China or before they're doing like 3 years business in China. And some of them that they tend to do the sales projection based on its domestic market figure. And I think this is not always accurate because China is a new market and it's quite different than your domestic one. So what we usually suggest is we help them to dig out their competitors' sales performance in China. And I think those data will be more relevant and be more accurate for the brands to do an internal benchmark. So I think the competitor's sales performance is more concrete than your domestic sales performance if you want to do a sales projection in China.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to turn to Daniel now, just to sort of wrap up the final question. And Daniel, if it's okay, could I ask you specifically, what advice can you give UK businesses who have an increased focus on international growth and the importance of localizing payment routes and managing your currency exposure in so doing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the critical point is to understand it, right? So we describe FX sometimes as a bit of a silent killer because it's not necessarily your first consideration when moving into an international market. So for lots of small businesses, they don't necessarily take adequate steps in understanding the impact of foreign exchange on pricing or how or the cost of returning those funds. So yeah, if you're talking about a business that's selling products at single or small double-digit profit margins, that in itself has quite a significant impact when you factor in foreign exchange. So it's really important to understand it. It's important to have a plan, have a strategy that sits behind that, and just be aware that it's a consideration because if you're making 10% profit margins on a product and market volatility means that the market swings 3, 4, 5%, that halves the profitability of that product overnight, and that can be quite challenging. So it's just there needs to be a level of understanding. There needs to be a plan behind it. But yeah, provided I think that businesses take the time, effort, and energy to sort of invest the time in that, I think actually in most cases doing businesses cross-border is not a challenge in itself presented by FX. I would add one point actually, just on the last question that you added, just around the challenges or the sort of preparation for doing business in China. It's just one thing that I think actually is quite relevant given our own experience, and that is the advice of localizing in China. And I think a few people have mentioned that, but if I was to look at our business and if we were to be self-reflective enough to say that there've been mistakes made over the years, I would say that one of those mistakes would have been not localizing in China fast enough. So we knew that there was a really big opportunity there. We grew our business really quickly, but China is a super competitive market, and businesses will compete. And the importance of localizing your product for Chinese businesses, consumers, is really, really important. So the moment that you identify that this is an opportunity and you're committed to it, I think it's really important to consider how you localize your brand and your image and your processes too, and that really will support and propel business success in China. And that would be one thing that I would reflect on and say that we should have done faster. So I think there's a bit of advice that I'd pass on as well.
Daniel, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists, to Serena, Jatin and Pearl, for coming on and giving us your wisdom. Thank you also to Daniel and WorldFirst for sponsoring this webinar. We're going to have a recording of this posted and distributed for early next week. So if you have colleagues who want to view this, we'll have it out there for you to look at early next week. Also, we've had a huge number of questions, and I know we haven't been able to answer them all, but don't worry, we'll be sending out a contact list on all the panelists tomorrow. And if you have any specific questions, please feel free to contact me or them directly. And finally, this is the second in a series of 4 interactive webinars we're doing with WorldFirst on international expansion. And the next one on the 9th of July will be an interview with Jonathan Quinn, founder of WorldFirst and now leading Ant Financial in Europe, and Jeff Parker, who is a new CEO of WorldFirst, both on their past and present, and how the organizations in the future will be supporting small and mid-sized businesses to scale globally. So until next time, wishing you a great evening as the lockdown here in London eases. And of course, in the meantime, stay safe. Thank you and goodbye.